Good morning. Today is Wednesday, the 2nd of July, and I thought I would just take a few minutes to introduce you to one of my guitars. This right here has a bit of a story behind it. I took a trip recently to the Holy Land with my wife to go on a tour with a group that was, mainly people from my church. We saw very much of Israel. It was a wonderful trip. But I had a bit of a dilemma as somebody who practiced guitar every day. I looked at what it would cost to fly with a guitar if I planned in advance, and the oversized luggage fee for Lufthansa is, subject to the gate agent's discretion, but up to $450 for anything over 21 inches long, which of course a guitar is. I didn't even own a guitar that was worth $450, so I figured the smart thing to do would be to arrive there, find a music store, buy an inexpensive guitar, and depending on whether it would be more expensive to get it back or not, maybe abandon it, give it away, sell it, something before I left, because it's a 2-week trip. So that would at least give me a means of practice. So the first full day that we were in Israel, we had some time to ourselves because part of the tour group was arriving that evening. So I found myself in the city of Netanya, which is a coastal city along the Mediterranean. It's kind of the, for lack of a better term, the Riviera of Israel. It is a very upper middle class to upper class city. It's home to Israel's only golf course. It's beautiful beachfront views. We were in a hotel right on the coast and a great view of the ocean. But I took my free time and put Google Maps up and found where the nearest music stores were, and I found one that looked promising. I walked there. I had a couple other errands to do. I had to change some money. I had to find a battery for my wife's camera, which we had neglected to pack. So I ended up going on a 9-mile odyssey through this strange city where almost everyone spoke English, but it still felt like I was in a foreign place because I was. Traffic was different. Everything was different. People acted different. Even the basic rituals of passing a stranger and whether or not you end up making eye contact, whether you say hello. I mean, those differ between U.S. cities, but it was very different in Israel. So eventually I found this music store. The clerk spoke enough English that I was able to explain to him, like, look, I'm in this country for 14 days. I want to buy an inexpensive guitar so I can keep practicing. And I looked at what he had on the wall, and this jumped out at me. This is, of course, I was kind of hoping that if I landed in a strange city, there would be guitar brands I had never heard of, a whole different palette of possible choices, but that was not the case, at least not in this particular store. This is a Gretsch Jim Dandy Dreadnought. This is Gretsch's sort of value-priced introductory line, but it's also popular for another reason. It's because of the retro aesthetic and, frankly, the retro sound. This is a throwback to a brand that Gretsch in its original form owned. It was primarily a mail order brand, and a lot of the early blues guys got these cheap at the time guitars, mail ordered, and they'd usually be parlor size. This is technically a dreadnought shape, maybe a short scale dreadnought, so it's sort of in practice it functions like a concert size guitar, but it looks like a dreadnought. And what appealed to me about this as soon as I played it is it sounded cheap, but it didn't sound cheap the way like an off-the-shelf, made in China Martin knockoff would sound cheap. It sounded cheap like a old school blues guitar would sound cheap, and you could play these sort of, it's got a boomy quality to it, but it still has some punch and some mid-range, and it feels very nice for finger picking. The nut width is wide enough, the height of the strings, the size of the frets, it just works with my hands, but it's also a very strummable guitar. So lot of control over the dynamic range. It's easy to be quiet and gentle with it, or loud and boomy, according to what you want to do. The action is nice and low, but still high enough that you can get your fingers in there if you want to fret individual notes and have less chance of interfering with the strings around you. Unlike, say, my Ovation, which plays a lot more like an electric. This pickup is also made by Gretsch. I added it recently after the fact. Not currently plugged in, but this is kind of, they call it a foil pickup. It's retro, quote unquote. Functions more like an electric guitar pickup. There's little magnets in there. It's not like just a glorified microphone or something that picks up vibration. It actually feels what the strings are doing. I named this guitar Aliyah. I'm not normally a guy who like gives a guitar a girl name, but Aliyah is the traditional religious term for pilgrimage in Hebrew, which was what I was on, so it seems appropriate. Once I had this and fell in love with it, I knew I was going to have to get it home somehow. So I looked into shipping. Shipping was prohibitively expensive, on the order of $500 to $600 for very slow shipping. And then you got to worry about the thing clearing customs and potentially being torn apart by our overzealous government apparatus. And the cost of taking it on the plane seemed like it might be prohibitive, but I was reading conflicting things because there's a provision in American law that you have apparently a right. I don't know if I'm saying that right or if that's technically legally correct, but I've heard it articulated as a right spelled out in a specific piece of legislation from the 1990s about passengers' rights on airplanes. You had the right to bring an instrument with you provided it could fit somewhere in the cabin. You had the right to carry it on. Obviously, this wasn't going to fit in the cabin, and with the hard case that I bought with it, it's a little large to fit in an overhead compartment. So I figured what I'd do is I would take it to the airport with me, talk to the gate agent, and try to bring it on the plane, try to see if they would let me bring it on the plane, ask nicely, use all my charm. What ended up happening, I met a very kind gate agent, a German woman who spoke beautiful English, but sort of kind of looked at me and winked and said, they're not going to let you bring it on the plane, but if I check it now, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a check tag on it. You're going to carry it on the plane, and the gate agent is then, or the other gate agent who you meet when you're boarding the plane is going to tell you, well, we're going to have to check that. They made a mistake. So it was a very kind way of her allowing me to get away with bringing this home. And that went perfectly. When I got off the plane here in Austin and saw this come around the conveyor, it looked like the latches on the case had been opened on one side as if by an impact, so I was concerned, but I opened it up and everything was fine. It even somehow maintained most of its tune despite flying across the entire world. So this is Aliyah, and I'm happy to have her here with me. The strings that came on her were, they were egregiously bad strings. I think they were 12s. They were wound 12s, round wound, typical guitar strings, just like these are, but they were the loudest strings I had ever seen or heard of. Any attempt to do like a slide would make like a nails on the chalkboard sound, like louder than the sound of plucking the note. It was hard to believe that noise came from this guitar. But I worked with it, and those strings kind of made me better at doing slides, at doing hammer-ons. And I've since put, these are Martin Retro strings, which I really love the sound of. They're made of Monel, which is I believe it's a brass alloy that's doesn't use one of the usual elements in brass. I don't know the details, but it has a very satisfying, full, and still bright sound. This one string here is just, the A string is from another set because I somehow snapped the A string as I was putting them on. And it looks different enough and sounds a little subtly different, so I often think I'm out of tune until I look down and remember I have this string, but it does hold tune. And really like this guitar. It is probably the cheapest guitar I own in terms of like actual new price and in terms of the quality of materials, quote unquote, but it's a beautiful design and I like the way it sounds. It really appeals to me aesthetically and in general. I love the look of it. I love the associations that it invokes for me. I love the way that it articulates individual notes. Playing badly since I'm playing for an audience here, but just to give you some idea. I think what I'm doing is I'm looking at myself in the screen here, and that's throwing off what I'm doing with my hands. Kind of like being in a Zoom meeting and trying to talk like you're in real life. But anyway, this is Aaliyah. I'll introduce you to some more of my equipment later. And just to give you an idea of how this sounds plugged in with that particular pickup, let me turn the amp on here. It takes on a tone that's like almost a little bit electric even through an acoustic amp, but I do enjoy that tone. It responds well to effects. This is kind of a, I was actually looking for something parlor sized or small just because it would be easier to transport, but I'm kind of glad I went with this. It's a great middle ground between the aesthetic of like an old school parlor guitar, and it still has the projection of a Dreadnought. So I find it easy to change dynamics so I can be louder or softer, so it can sound smoother or janglier. I kind of like having those abilities. So that is probably my favorite guitar, at least my favorite acoustic in my arsenal right now. Not necessarily on its merits, but because of its story, because of what it means to me, and because of really its aesthetic and how it fits the style of the guys I want to play like. So thank you for paying attention, and I'll keep introducing you to my instruments as they come up and as I hopefully acquire more in the future. Thank you very much.